God saved me. I was about to have a surgery. So 19 centimeters of my bowel popped out. So I was in excruciating pain. I went in, they gave me the whole, I think you ate too much for the holidays. And I'm like, I don't think that's what it is. And they rushed in and was like, you need to have an emergency surgery. However, the physician that was willing to do the surgery told me he had been working for 4 days straight, but he was willing to get a coffee and do the surgery. And that's where I had to advocate and be like, I think I'm going to pass. If you've been up for 96 hours straight during the scandemic, I'm good. I'm not going to be catching a surgery. So I went to a specialist, and then the day of my surgery, they did another MRI. The night before, I was in horrible pain. So essentially, my bowel got really inflamed. It popped out, and then it retracted. So that was awesome, right? You're like, thank God I don't have to have surgery. It was a miracle, legit.
Because you was about to go on a knife the other day.
Yes, honey, I was going. However, I believe what we're seeing is I'm having some gut issues on this left side. And what we think happened is when it retracted, I think it got a little pinched up. So that's why we're going to go in and do a colonoscopy. Like I said, you guys are getting the tea about it, which I will talk about on my Instagram, my podcast. You're just getting firsthand information. So that will be my 6th colonoscopy. But I had so many colonoscopies. And it's interesting. When I get a new doctor, they're always like, oh, they just assume a cancer diagnosis. So they're like, oh, are you in remission? I'm like, well, yeah, my endo's in remission, but there's no cancer diagnosis. I just have had, 6 colonoscopies, or I'll have my 6th one, which is rare for 44. Typically, most people have only maybe had one. But if you have endometriosis, or you have like fibroids or any type of serious gut issues or inflammation, for us, a colonoscopy is like nothing. You're like, you already got the prep down pat. You know what to do. I'm good. And it's going to be even better this time because I have my essential oils. So I'm good to go.
And we want to get into that. I want to get into gut and brain health. But before you get into that, and you talked about your symptoms, my symptoms, and maybe it was silent endo, but I felt like it wasn't until it was the whole really bad bowels, but it was just like, I thought I had food poisoning. It was like the real nauseous, sick feeling. Didn't think it had anything to do with my period, because normally with my periods, I didn't get sick. Like maybe the first few days I'd have cramps, but it wasn't like, nothing like what most of our endometriosis conquerors have, like at all. So it was just like regular. So I didn't associate my sickness with the period being on, because I never associated them to being alike. A few months after that was in April. A few months after that, in August, it was debilitating. I was balled up on the bathroom floor. I could barely move. I couldn't get comfortable in my bed. I was hot. The hot sweats were already there. And I just chunked it up to like family. Like my granddaddy was in the military. He gets hot sweats. He sweats in his sleep. So I was just thinking, it's that. Didn't realize, thinking about my thyroid, a hormonal, imbalance, anything like that. I was just like, it's my family. Facial hair. Always had facial hair. People in my family had it. Never thought it had anything to do with my body, like something being a sign or a symptom. But when I was driving to work, and I was just driving, and that pain hit me, and I went to swerve, and there was like an 18-wheeler. Like, you just lose the strength in your body when that pain hits sometimes. It took you out to where you passed out. And it was just like, I got to get that only little bit of strength left I have in order to pull back into my lane to make it where I needed to go. And I had never felt that pain like that before in my life. And it was my nurse practitioner, who looked like me, and that I knew and had a relationship with, who told me, you just need to go to the ER. We need imaging. We need to see what's really going on. We can't just go on what you feel, what you see coming out. It's like, we need to see, we need to get on the inside. And that's when they saw, like, I had a cyst on my ovary. One was ruptured, and I had no idea. I always thought I was healthy, Dr. LJ. I was a dancer. I felt like I looked good on the inside. I felt like I ate pretty well. I wouldn't say all the way well, like we're going to get into this gut and brain health, but gut and brain connection. But it was those symptoms, and it wasn't that long. And then to go and have laparoscopic surgery and come out with stage 4 endo, like you said, it was everywhere. It was on so many different organs in my body, and I had no idea. I didn't have the consistent, like you did, pain since 14, leading me up to know something was wrong with my body. So like you said, you line us up, you put 10 of us up on the screen, and we tell our stories. None of that is going to be there. The lower back pain was there, though. And I just thought, maybe I'm not hydrated. Maybe it's like my kidneys.
Or you're a dancer. You're like, maybe I'm overdoing it.
I didn't stretch enough, or I need to stretch too much, ballet, all those other things. And it's just like, it was mind boggling to know that it was as intense as it was, and I had no idea until you have the surgery. And it's like the surgery is going to let you know exactly what's happening. Other than that, you just have a feeling, and you need
Right.
to know, because if you don't know, you're going to be like the lady you saw who think I just have a deadline that when my
Yeah.
period ends, I'm gonna be okay, and that's not the case. Like, it's not the
Right.
case at all.
But I think it's important what you said. Lots of different symptoms, back pain, facial hair. And this is what you need. You need someone that's going to take a full holistic approach, because what happens is when you went in talking about the facial hair, if you would go to the doctor, they're probably like, oh, try this, or let me send you to a dermatologist. Your back's hurting? Cool. Let me send you over to pain management physical therapy. But you need someone that's like, okay, all this, is adding up, and they're all connected. I say it all the time and people laugh. Your head is connected to your body. Like, I know you know that, but when you're having horrible acne, do you look in the mirror and look at that pimple and be like, oh my Lord, what should I do to balance my gut health? No, you're like, where's the Curology? Where's the pimple patch? What am I rubbing? What concoction is Pinterest going to tell me to put on this pimple? Because you're trying to get it right. You're not thinking about your gut health. But like you said, leading into that gut brain connection, everything is connected. And so we try to silo the period pain from the sciatic, from the back, from the chest. I would have nosebleeds, just out of any. So it's interesting. Every time I had a period, I just thought I bled out of every orifice, because that's what I would have: rectal bleeding. I was bleeding vaginally. I was bleeding through my nose. I just assumed that was normal. So then to hear from someone else and realize everyone else wasn't having that issue, I was like, this is interesting. I didn't know. I would just have nosebleeds. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Colorado, and people are like, oh, it's dry there. It wasn't, no, it wasn't just because I had a dry, yeah. I mean, I was also in Oklahoma and Texas is very humid. So I'm like, that's where I'm like, okay, it was literally the endo lesions, and they would just bleed. I would get a lot of sinus pressure pain, a lot of dental issues. Eardrums were always bursting and full. Sometimes, I'm just loud naturally, but then there were times I was super loud because I couldn't hear, right? Like, I literally could not hear because my nasal patches, everything was just so compacted.
Yes, I was just like, oh my goodness. But you mentioned about that gut and brain health, gut and brain connection. I know you were talking about, like, sometimes your body has to go in that fight or flight mode, and I was just like,
Yeah,
that.
so let's talk about fight or flight.
Okay.
Endometriosis, whether or not you're in pain or not, because some of you are going to be like, oh, I'm not in pain. This doesn't include me. This is the deal. The way I like to talk about endo is a small fire that is always burning. No matter if you're feeling amazing, I don't have any. So I'm going to start by saying this. As far as endometriosis is a diagnosis, I don't name it. I don't claim it. It is not me. It is my specialty, but I don't have period cramps. I don't have painful sex. Like, all of that stuff, I'm past that. However, the chronic systemic inflammation, that small fire, each day I make habits to decrease the fire versus when you are in a flare, which is why we need to be proactive about some of these things we're going to start talking about, not waiting till you're in pain and then on Dr. Google trying to figure out, oh, what do I do? No. Number one, Dr. Google probably ain't gonna give you the right answers. Number two, you're in pain. You're not going to be able to order the stuff, get what you need. Like, you need to have it in your toolbox. So when we talk about that, it's like you have to realize that that small flame is going to have you in fight or flight. Fight or flight is great when you have to, run out and get your dog so it doesn't get hit by a car, or your boss is like, hey, LJ, I need this project done within 2 hours versus 24 hours. Okay, cool. Like, I've got to go. But that stressful go is that cortisol is just for short periods of time. That's an external stressor.